I'd like to ask permission from Dhanajan, Kalyano, and all of you, every member of the Sangha here, to speak tonight. This year I have been invited by Tanjakun Visuddhi Sangwaratera, or you more familiarly know as Ajahn Brahm, and also the Buddhist Society of Western Australia. Been invited to visit Australia, particularly the monastery, Bodhinyana Monastery in Perth, but also to come across to the east to see and visit the Sangha in some of the other branch monasteries of Wat Pah Pong. This all began when, back in 2 years ago, 2550, at the Memorial Day retreat at Wat Pah Pong, in January of that year, I was talking to Ajahn Mao, Ajahn Chah, who lives in Italy, and asked him if it was appropriate for me to visit the monasteries in the West, and he suggested yes, it would be a very good thing to do because you're a senior Thera and it would be good for the Sangha if you visited. So that's how the whole thing came about. It led on to a conversation with Ajahn Brahm, and the arrangements started to fall into place. He phoned me and then wrote a letter, and when Thanajan Kampong, who visited us here last year and who had spent the Vasa in Perth, when he returned to Thailand after that Vasa, he took the letter with him, and I met him at his own monastery's Katina after that rains, where he passed on this letter of invitation. Following that, I took steps, the appropriate steps through the administration, Sangha administration, to obtain the visa and necessary documents to travel, and Ajahn Brahm offered to cover all the expenses of tickets and so on, which led up to my actual travelling to Perth on the 4th of March, leaving Bangkok with Venerable Ajahn Jarat, who's travelled with me on this trip. Ajahn Brahm has been a friend in the Dhamma to me. We've had a mutual friendship right since the very early days when I was at Wat Pah Pong. We've known each other since the year 2519, the Buddhist era, when I spent the rains at Wat Pah Chat. Chah sent me there to stay with the Western Sangha. At that time, Thanajan Sumedho was the abbot, and there were about 25 Sangha members spending the Vasa together. It was a good chance to practice in the teachings and the core of Ajahn Chah together, and it was the beginning of this long-term relationship, good friendship with Ajahn Brahm and many of the other Western Sangha members who are still in the robes today. And I noticed that since then and right up to the present, the Western Sangha have always had a good, respectful way whenever they're with each other, with Lumpur, Chah in those days, or since then, when they go to Wat Pah Pong, they've always shown great respect for the Sangha and a great warmth, which I've always appreciated. And that warmth hasn't really faded, even though Lumpur Chah has passed away. The warm and respectful relationships between the Thai and Western Sangha are still there and very strong. This is part of the reason when I came across to Perth, Ajahn Brahm also wanted me to come to Melbourne and Sydney to meet with the Sangha in the different monasteries over here, again to extend that warm, mutual respectful relationship. I never thought that I would leave Thailand, travel overseas in a plane for many hours. In my youth I never dreamt that that would be possible, but it's actually in line, or comes about through that teaching of the Buddha, where he said associating with wise people will bring you benefit and success in your life. And I think that's very true for me. I've met many wise people having come into the robes, particularly Luang Chah, my teacher, and many of his disciples who are good and wise monks, and benefited in many ways from associating and meeting with these wise people right through to the present, and that has been the cause for me to come across the ocean to Australia, to come here today, and I'm very proud and happy to have had this opportunity to come here. I received special metta from Luang Chah in many ways during those early years living with him. I had already ordained in the local village monastery, as I discussed earlier this evening, and you must remember that the village monasteries in Thailand tend to be a little bit different in atmosphere and style of practice from the forest monasteries. Forest monasteries tend to be very strict in the Vinaya, and the emphasis is on meditation practice, whereas the village monasteries tend to be more dedicated for the study of the scriptures and the maintenance of the customs and ceremonial side of the religion. I had stayed as a village monk for 2 reigns until I eventually moved to Wat Pah Pong to study with Luang Chah, and there I really dedicated my life once entering the Sangha there to serve and study with him as my teacher. I just gave up to him as my teacher, gave him everything. He made me sit at the end of the line of monks for 2 months as an Akanduka monk. He didn't straight away let me into the Patimokkha. I had to stay at the end of the line of the monks, stay out of the Patimokkha, and that was a period of just testing me, testing the strength of my faith and determination to want to whether I really wanted to practice there or not. It's a bit like you here who go through this period of training as an anagarika and then a novice before you become a monk. It's the same principle. There were many other ways he showed his kindness to me and compassion. In the first few years I was in the monastery, after a couple of years living there, he asked me to assist the store monk, and the store monk at that time was either Luang Por Liam or Luang Por Chu. They were both very senior and had a lot of had an important role to play in the monastery, so this was a great privilege and honour to assist them. He also asked me to help lead the chanting and give some instructions during the Sangha. He said I had a good, clear, loud voice, and so I could help in that role. And after 4 reigns as a monk, he even encouraged me and asked me to teach Dhamma on certain occasions, appropriate occasions. Again, I had a clear voice, a confident voice, which he seemed to think was helpful. And this was quite a special privilege. Most monks didn't start teaching or weren't given the job of teaching until they were more senior in the Sangha, but he had me start when I was just 4 reigns. And lastly, he showed his kindness to me by making me one of the Upatak monks, one of his close attendants. At that time I did a lot of attending on him with the novice Brichar, who is now Ajahn Brichar, who lives in Italy. So we got to know each other very well. And this was a very great and special opportunity for me to be close to Luang Chah, to hear him talk, to be around him, and I received much from him at that time. Over the years, the numbers of Sangha, both Thai and foreign, under the auspices, under the umbrella of Wat Pah Pong Luang Chah has increased, and the number of branch monasteries has grown. So over the years they needed some kind of body of senior monks to help oversee that growth, and I was brought into a committee of 15 senior teras who had the job of overseeing the branch monasteries to see that the new ones that were established properly and run properly, and also to oversee the growth of the branch monasteries in foreign countries as well. And over the years, the Western Sangha have invited many of these Theras in this original group of 15 to travel abroad to join in Sangha functions, visit the monasteries to give advice, share experience and provide mutual support. This is finally, for me personally, this is how this trip has come about. And I see this as the fruits of my practice, having practiced in the Sangha for many years and living with Luang Por Chah, and particularly the merits perhaps that have arisen from training under Luang Por Chah and attending on him have directly been of benefit to me and led to this trip and this role coming about. I almost didn't manage to come, wasn't able to come, because twice my application through the administrative part of the Sangha was knocked back. But this year and this trip, finally, they gave me permission to come. I'm aware that next month in Perth they have the opening ceremony of their new meditation retreat centre, and also here on the 12th of April you have your opening ceremony for the Ubosada Hall, the burying of the Sema stones. I won't be able to stay for that, but nevertheless I consider this visit as in some way supportive of these opening ceremonies, and I certainly do give you my full support for those ceremonies and what you're doing here. Talking about the practice and teachings of Luang Por Chah when he was alive, I remember that he was very much one who led the Sangha and laity in the practice through his own example and energy, and he really managed to draw out the faith, the confidence and the inspiration in the laity and the Sangha. First of all, he always grounded his teachings and the respect and the direction of the practice in faith in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, the triple gem. And then spreading on from that, he inspired confidence in the core what of the Krubarajan, they say, of the Krubarajan of the forest tradition. Until generally he was held, say, all over Thailand, he has the reputation in the Sangha as being one who had a very strict and firm core what and practice personally and then in his Sangha, and that became his kind of trademark. The core what, the way of practice in the monastery, was based very much on the 13 Tudonga Wattas, and also particularly on the emphasis on not using money, not handling money, not having private funds for individual monks. The monks were always were encouraged to stay in the forest as their regular practice, and dedicate themselves to the practice of both samatha and vipassana meditation. Always eating once a day in the bowl. These are the kind of trademarks of Wat Pah Pong and Luang Por Chah's practice, and he was greatly respected for that. He's probably generally respected in Thailand as an Arya Pugala, an Arahant enlightened teacher. But that wasn't just a belief, it was something that people really felt and saw for themselves through his own example, the way he lived, the way he practiced himself. They could see he had genuine patience and endurance in his own practice, in his own personal discipline, practice of the Vinaya and dedication to meditation. And then he also had great barami and great abilities and qualities in leading the Sangha and the laity as well, in teaching. He had immense wisdom and experience and creativity in the way he taught others. And people gradually began to really believe and have confidence in the power, you might say, using this word, the power of his abilities or his barami. It had a real energy to it, a real power to it. Not only Thais could see that and feel that, even the foreigners who came to Wat Pah Pong were attracted by it. Even though Luang Por Chah himself couldn't speak more than a few words of English and no other foreign languages either, it didn't matter because he understood the language of the mind. He was aware that everyone wants to find truth. Everyone wants to understand and gain wisdom, peace and purity of mind. So these are the sort of qualities he pursued and brought out in people and brought to them through his teachings. And he was a very energetic teacher. A typical week in the monastery, on the Ubosita day in the afternoon they would have the Patimokkha, and then in the early evening the monks would all go into the main sala and join the lay people for meditation and then chanting, and then after the evening chanting Luang Por Chah would get up onto the tamak to give his evening Dhamma talk, and it would be quite regular that he would talk all night, go right through the night before he got down off the high seat. And of course while he was there on the high seat everyone stayed to listen. And people gained from that. They gained peace, happiness and understanding from listening to those long Dhamma discourses. It was just like pouring water into an empty bottle. As he was teaching, it seemed like the Dhamma was flowing into the minds and hearts of the people. And as they listened, they gained more happiness, more contentment through listening and understanding the Dhamma, and this was the cause for samadhi to arise in their hearts. Of course, some monks would be caught into dullness, drowsiness, overcome by the hindrance of Tinamitta. But Luang Por Chah was expert in finding ways to talk about the Dhamma that would help them through that. He would have ways to make the Dhamma become interesting, enjoyable for the listener so that they forgot and lost their drowsiness. Even on ordinary days, other than the Uposita, he would always go back to his kuti after the evening meeting, evening chanting and meditation, and give at least a short talk to the monks who assembled there. And sometimes that short talk could become quite a long talk as well. And whenever people left the kuti, they would go back to their own kutis and they'd want to carry on meditating. They were so inspired, so they'd carry on sitting and walking for a while before they went to rest. And then in the morning, first thing, 3 a.m. or even earlier, they would be up ready for the morning meeting where they'd just carry on with their practice. Everyone had the attitude that they were there to practice. That's what they were there in the monastery for. And that's what brought the effort out in everyone. And his teachings really did that. They helped people to arise energy and effort in the practice. It would be correct to say that the members of the Sangha had a great respect for Luang Por Chah because of their belief that he was an enlightened being and an Arya Pugala. You might even say a wise fear of him. They really respected him because his virtue was obvious. It was through and through. On the worldly level, you might say he was very much like a mother and a father all rolled into one, looking after the family, the Sangha. In terms of the Dhamma, his virtue was seen through the fact he was the Upajjhaya. He was the preceptor who actually gave birth to monks, who brought them into the Sangha and gave them ordination. But more than that, he dealt with the Sangha with a great evenness and with no bias, no obvious bias in his mind or his behaviour. In those days it was very hard. The numbers of monks, novices and nuns was very high in the monastery, but the amount of support was still quite limited. It was a poor area and the forest was quite remote, so there wasn't that many requisites offered. People would like to have a drink in the evening, but there simply wasn't that much available. You might get a drink, a sweet drink, say a cup of tea or coffee once a week, at most twice a week, on the day before the all-night sit, the one prat, the holy day, or the holy day itself. And that was simply just because there's too many, or so many monks, nuns, and monks and novices and nuns, that there wasn't enough for more than that. There wasn't enough available of the ingredients to make an evening drink. Luang Chah, nevertheless, would not let anyone feel left out. He would give everyone equal attention, whether it's the monks, the young novices, the nuns, Thais, foreigners, whoever. He had time for everyone and took an interest in everyone, so they all felt very much connected and part of the Sangha. Whatever requisites were offered, he made sure they were distributed. He didn't just keep them for himself. Whatever was offered to him personally, he would always share out with the Sangha. And he wouldn't just hoard the requisites in the stores, or he wouldn't just let them be for a certain group of monks. He would try to make sure they were distributed evenly throughout the Sangha. Whatever was made available, it was given out, shared. When it was finished, well, that was that. You just had to accept it's finished, but you knew at least that it had been shared out, so you couldn't really complain or feel bad about it. That was the way he dealt with the 4 requisites that were offered. He always made sure that what was in the Sangha store went around the monastery, was distributed, and everyone got some kind of a share. And his teachings were the same. He tried to share his teachings out so that everybody could get some understanding of the Dhamma. And he always brought his teachings very directly back to the mind, always teaching the monks and the Sangha members to look at their minds, and his teachings pointed to the mind, because that's the place of practice. He always used to say, if we say good things or bad things, that all arises from the mind. If we do good things or bad things, and it comes from our minds, there's no need to know other people's minds very much. You don't have to spend your time thinking about other people. You have to focus on your own mind, get to know that. You don't have to spend your time getting involved with thoughts about, I like this monk, I don't like that monk. He discouraged that, and he always said, just come back to your own mind and watch that. Whatever moods you have, just watch them arise and pass away. Don't get involved with them, don't give them any energy, or don't attach to them. He said that if everyone is doing that, taking responsibility for their own minds, looking after their own minds, then we can all live together in harmony. Or everyone in the monastery, a large group of monks and nuns, foreign and Thai, can all live together if everyone is taking responsibility for their own, looking after their own minds. So this is the way he taught. He looked after the Sangha like a family. There was one particular occasion I was very impressed with the way he dealt with some of the issues that arose. There was one time one of the Western monks came to him on Magha Puja with a question that was bothering him. He asked Luang Chah, he said, you have many disciples and students here living together. Aren't they a cause for you to be concerned or worried that you have to look after them all, you have to lead them in the practice and teach them? Isn't this a cause of suffering for you? Luang Chah answered this question in his characteristic way of finding a useful simile or comparison for the monk to help him understand. He said, really, I'm like a farmer who has a lot of cows. Say a farmer might have 10 or 20 cows. And as you know, cows are animals that are difficult to look after. But what the farmer does, in the morning he opens up his enclosed area, the fenced area where he keeps the cattle overnight. He opens it up and drives them out into the grassy fields and the forested areas where they can eat. He said if it's a real cow, then it will go out of the fence corral and he'll walk into the fields and it will start eating grass. If it's not a real cow, then it won't do that, it won't eat. He said the monks and novices are much the same. The ones that come to live with me at Wat Pah Pong, they're all very dedicated to the practice. So they're just like real cows that eat grass and don't have to be told how to do it, when to do it. When you give them grass, they eat it. When you send them out into the fields, they eat the grass and there's no big problem. You don't have to force them and you don't have to worry about them. Luang Por Chah said it's just the same with the monks. He just really has to explain the Dhamma so that they know what to do, and then off they go and do it. When they need further explanation, he can give it, but really his job is just to do that, explain the Dhamma to them and then send them off to practice and leave them to it. He doesn't have to be standing over them all the time, because if they're dedicated and sincere, then they'll be practicing. That monk was very impressed with the answer, very happy. I could see he was very happy with the answer. And this is just one example of Luang Por Chah's great wisdom in explaining a point of Dhamma that particularly stuck with me because I was present on that occasion. But there are many other occasions like this. All of you, the monks, the novices and the laity, should reflect that having been born here as human beings in this human realm, that this is really the highest or the supreme amongst all the realms in the universe. It's the most suitable birth for the practice of Dhamma. The Buddha himself, prior to being a Buddha, was born into the human realm. As we know, there are 7 main realms of existence, and what we have gained here with our human birth, we say Manusa Samapatti. We've gained the wealth of this human birth, the human form, and the mind of a human, the qualities of a human, one who has a supreme mind, a Manusa. There are also the realms of happiness, the Devaloka, and the highest happiness, Nibbana, coming from the Arya path and fruit. No one wishes for suffering in their life, but because we have all been making karma for so long, we must endlessly spin around in samsara. No one wants to experience suffering, no one wants to be reborn in the realms of suffering, the hell realms, preta realms, asurakaya realms, or the animal realms. But we are caught into samsara, so we have experienced these realms and they have experienced suffering. We experience birth and death over and over again. Just like me coming to Australia here from Thailand, I've passed over and passed through many towns and villages. It's like that. Samsara is like that, over and over again, passing through things. But it's all based and driven by karma. Having been born as humans now, we have come into the world, we have our 32 parts, as we just chanted, complete and ready for us to use. This is our good fortune. We've also had a mother and father who were kind enough to bring us up, educate us, feed us and so on. And this is our good fortune as well. Now we must consider our greatest good fortune, the fact that we've come into contact with the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Really deep down, all beings wish for happiness, and you could say they all wish for the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. The Buddha was enlightened 2,500 years ago, and since then still there has not been any other teacher, enlightened teacher, surpassing him. He still stands supreme. Only when the next Buddha arises in the world will there be someone who's equal to our Buddha, our teacher. So we have this good opportunity. We have our chance to practice, and we have our spiritual wealth which we bring with us. And we shouldn't waste that chance. Worldly wealth can change. Seeking that can only really bring us suffering. You have a family, you have money and other material wealth, but it's all subject to anicca, dukkha, anatta. Luang Por Chah had many foreign students over the years. The very first was Luang Por Sumedho, who came back in the 1960s. Your teacher, Ajahn Kalyano, is another one of them. He came from England seeking for liberation from suffering to practice under Ajahn Chah. He's also practiced with Luang Por Liam and subsequently with Ajahn Anan. Now he is being sent to Australia to teach and practice here in this monastery. So this is also your good fortune, to have met with a teacher who has trained in the core what of our teachers, who has the ability to pass it on to you. This is something you should reflect on, because coming into the robes to practice as a monk is something very difficult. It's a rare opportunity and not easy for human beings to do. I hope that you can appreciate your good fortune here, just as I do, Ajahn Anan does, and Ajahn Kalyano does. Whether you are in Thailand or in Australia, you're very lucky to have this opportunity. And in the Sangha we live like a family. We have a mother and a father looking after us. We have a teacher, an upajjhaya, who leads us and guides us and takes care of us. Our duty is to, when we appreciate that, is to show respect for the teacher and upajjhaya, to listen to what they say, to serve them, and to try and put into practice what they teach. The teacher gives us the warmth, they give us the material support, the four requisites of robes, food, medicines and shelter. Even I have benefited from the warmth and what Ajahn Kalyano here has to give, has to support the Sangha, has offered to support the Sangha. As I'm staying here, I'm benefiting from that as well. All of us receive the benefit from him as a teacher and the convenience that he provides. He gives us the Dhamma, the Vinaya. Once you appreciate this, then what arises in the mind is the sense of duty, and the correct response to that is to want to practice in the proper way, the correct way. Whether you're junior or whether you're a senior monk, we should take the Dhamma that we're given by the teacher away with us to reflect on and practice, just as I did with the Dhamma that was given to me by Luang Por Chah. When we respect a teacher and follow the teachings we're given, this will be a cause for peace to arise in our hearts, and wisdom will follow, and this will lead us to progress in the Dhamma. Just as myself and Ajahn Kalyano as senior monks have already benefited from following our own teachers in the past and from the Bharami of the Buddha, so in turn I hope all of you will keep putting effort into your practice so that you can also benefit, and in turn, as you benefit from the practice, you will also be able to benefit others, the wider lay community who come here, see how you practice and benefit in that way. This place here is a very suitable place for the practice of Dhamma. It's quiet and well organized. Outside in the world they have houses and clothes and money, but they're still suffering. That can't solve the suffering of the heart. So everyone is looking for the food of the heart, food for the heart, because it's that kind of food, the spiritual nourishment, that really leads to peace arising for people. I've had a few different reflections arise during my trip here in Australia. Firstly, I've been very impressed by both Ajahn Brahm and Ajahn Kalyano, seeing how they're both very willing to deal with the obstacles in establishing monasteries, training monks and teaching. But these external obstacles that they've had to overcome are nothing compared with the internal obstacles that they've also had to overcome, dealing with the 8 worldly dhammas. It's just normal in that position that you'll experience all of the 8 worldly dhammas. If we don't get what we want, we must learn to see that as ordinary, not let it be a cause for suffering in our minds. If we're not yet firm and wise in the Dhamma, these worldly Dhammas will be a cause for suffering. The praise, the gain, the loss, the criticism, and so on. Luang Por Chah said we have to see in our practice reflect to the point where we can see happiness and suffering, gain and loss have equal value. When we do this, we say we are letting go of these worldly dhammas, these worldly conditions. So as a monk visiting from abroad, I give my anumodana to you all. I've been impressed by your faith and all the efforts you're putting forth into your practice. And I thank you all for your receiving me so warmly, kindly and helpfully. I'm impressed with everybody. I think this monastery will be an important place for the study and practice of Dhamma in the future. The Buddha himself was only able to teach for 45 years, but he managed to teach 84,000 Dhammakandas. We have these for our benefit. We have Kalyana Mitta of the Kruba and our teachers to support us. This is all our good fortune. Luang Por Chah taught not to worry. He said, don't worry, don't concern yourself about other people. Focus on your own mind and what you're doing in the practice. This is the same for you laymen living here as well while you stay here. I hope you all put effort into the practice. The kind of attitude you have is one of go ahead and do it. Just get on with your practice. When you eat, you will know when you are full for yourself. It's not something that somebody else can tell you. This is what we mean by Pachatang Veditabo Vinyuhi. The wise know for themselves. We practice and we have to experience the fruits and the results of our practice for ourselves. You can't just tell from the outside about other people. You might look at a monk but not be quite sure from the outside where he's at or what he's experienced. Some monks in the past have been liberated, they've been enlightened, but their external behavior has been a bit coarse, not very beautiful. Some have been liberated, enlightened teachers, but had very few disciples. Some have been liberated teachers, but have had not much ability to actually teach or pass on the Dhamma. So it's not a sure thing. Look at the Wat Pah Pong Sangha. We have many different monks in this Sangha and many different characters. There's Luang Por Rat, one of the most senior monks, disciples of Luang Por Chah, but he never talks, he never teaches. He's always just cool and peaceful. He can come to the Wat Pah Pong meetings and sit all day with this cool, peaceful mood, but he never gives much teaching. Another monk of note was Luang Por Jan. He was totally different. He would speak loudly, energetically, he would move fast, he would organize things, but his mind was just very peaceful and full of metta. Maybe you might look at me and think I don't look so restrained or so well practiced. All I know is that when I went to stay with Luang Por Chah, I offered my life to him, I dedicated everything to him and was willing to receive everything from him. Whatever he sent my way, I took it on board, whether he praised me or scolded me. Some things on the outside probably didn't change. One can't change everything. I can't change the way I look. I'm still have dark skin and look the way I am. But things do change on the inside, on the way the mind is. I can remember the very first day I arrived at Wat Pah Pong. Just walking into the forest, I had an amazing sense of coolness and peace arising in my mind. It was like water, cool water from a fridge, just flowing into the mind, something very different. I practiced hard, and I can remember one particular day after the evening talk. I had been staying in a small kuti on the west of the monastery, very near Luang Por Sumedho's kuti. After the evening talk, after the evening meeting, I went back to my hut and started walking meditation. After a while doing that, then I went up onto the kuti and started sitting meditation. Straight away my mind became peaceful, went straight into samadhi, and a brightness arose in the mind. I reflected on the world, and I could see the whole world is in a state of emptiness, sunyo. Wat Pong seemed to disappear. The trees disappeared, the kuti disappeared. All that was left was this peaceful, blissful radiance of the mind. As I withdraw out of that, I just contemplated in this way, and great pity and sukha arose in my heart. My heart was so cool for the next period that whatever people said or did or whatever happened around me, nothing bothered me. My heart just stayed cool and unruffled, unshaken. It was like this for 3 days and 3 nights. But this kind of thing is a very personal experience. It's pachatang. But all of you can have the potential to experience things like this. You just have to have the faith and keep practicing. I think you all have a good chance to practice here because it's peaceful and quiet and the monastery is well organized and well run. You have a chance to practice with a good teacher, Ajahn Kalyano, who has passed on his experience to you, what he's learned from Luang Chah, Luang Liam, Luang Anand. Luang Chah asked that when we do practice, what we gain, we must reflect on that. And what we're seeking to gain, we must reflect on that. Really, we mustn't seek to gain anything. We mustn't look for that or try to attach to just the gaining things or attaining things. The essence of practice is learning how to let go of everything. If we learn how to let go, this is where peace will arise in the mind. For lay people, they tend to be proud of their material wealth, what they own and possess. As monks, we don't own any possessions, any wealth. All we can look for is niramisa sukha, the kind of internal spiritual wealth and happiness that arises from letting go in this way. This arises when we see that all physical mental phenomena are anicca, dukkha, anatta. This is the way sati arises. This is the way apamada or heedfulness arises. And this is the way that panya will arise, the brightness of panya will arise in your mind. So please determine yourself to practice. Really give up to the practice. Make a vow that you're going to die in the robes. Die practicing as a monk in the Buddhist religion. So I've come here to meet with you all on this trip, on this visit to the monastery, having been invited here by Ajahn Brahm and subsequently Ajahn Kalyano. And I feel that you've all treated me very well, and I'm very happy with this visit, and I'm very impressed with you all. I hope that Ajahn Kalyano will be a refuge for you all, a good guide for you in years to come, for you all and also for the wider Buddhist community in Australia. I've talked for quite a while now. If you've listened to my talk and reflected on it, if you find that anything is not quite correct or I've been mistaken in what I've said, I apologize for that and ask forgiveness from the Sangha. On the other hand, if anything I have said has been of benefit to you, I hope that you can reflect on it, take it away, practice with it, and hope that it might be a cause for some sati, some panya to arise in your hearts, and be a cause for you to increase your efforts in the practice of the Dhamma Vinaya. I wish you all good health in your practice and success and progress in the Dhamma Vinaya of the Buddha. And I'll just say this much for tonight, A1.